what happened Monday night was incredibly special. What happened yesterday when Tennessee had a national championship celebration was incredibly special. Everything, I'm being completely objective here. The hugging of the dad, the celebration just short of the mound, all of that was incredibly special. And I don't care if you're a Tennessee fan or not. If you watched that and you didn't think, wow, then I don't know that you have a heart beating in your chest. Caleb, Greg McElroy, former Alabama quarterback and works for ESPN and WJOX in Birmingham, apparently didn't think very highly of the celebration. Let's get to those comments. I remind you that portions of the program are brought to you by Quality Tire Pro. The Eberle family has been serving Chattanooga since 1957. All major brands of tires. Taking my daughter's car there today, actually. Full service automotive, brakes, alignments, and more. Cherokee Blvd or online at qualitytirepros.com. qualitytirepros.com. Tell Bo that Off the Hook Sports said hello. So do you want to pull up this Greg McElroy quote, and then I had you specifically not play it so I could go in fresh. I want to hear it and go.
It's a tough team to root for. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, his antics after the game last night were embarrassing. Seriously.
I mean, listen, just because he was a wrestling fan, I don't feel like we have to be mad at him about it. I mean, we know know what side he was on.
You just won a national championship. Have some class.
WWF,
like WWE, with all due respect, not class. Just not.
And that's all we really need to show there. He was referring to Tony Vitello's celebration after the Vols national title win when Tony Vitello jumped into the crowd with the fans.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to ask you and the message board right now. Tell me one thing, and please be objective. That's why I love our fan base. We have the best fan base of anybody on the internet or traditional media. They're smart. They're educated. Give me one thing that kind of rubbed you the wrong way. Is there anything? I mean, really?
He celebrated with his fans after winning a national title. How is that classless?
And hugged his dad to the point that everybody around him's crying. I mean,
it was the most ridiculous statement I've ever seen. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen a person say, honestly, in broadcasting. And I don't say that lightly. There was nothing classless about that. Nothing at all.
Well, and listen, what is Tony Vitello supposed to do, guys? Is Tony Vitello supposed to be all laid back and do nothing and not be celebratory? That's the man he is. He's a passionate man. No, Greg McElroy, he's not like Nick Saban, who is your coach. They're very different people. But Caleb, that's fine. Tennessee needed Tony Vitello and what he brought to the athletic department and the baseball program, and they got it. I'm just befuddled. If you want to say this about the 2022 team, I'd probably be on right now saying you're absolutely right, Caleb. If they pulled the annex that they did short of the College World Series, in the College World Series and the finals, and they won it, I would say that team's still tough to root for. Because that 2022 team and their antics were tough to root for. This is a different team. This isn't the same team.
And so I didn't play the part before that part. Greg McElroy they were talking about the 2022 team, and Greg McElroy, and I actually agree that he said the 2022 team was probably better than this team, and he said their antics got the best of them. That all would have been fair, and I'm with you. But then he goes, the antics the other night were embarrassing. And did you hear Cole Kubelik was basically I don't know what, he was really trying to he's being diplomatic on the radio show with Greg, but he really was I don't know if they were that bad. I don't know if I don't see any problem with it. But
Greg, it's funny you mentioned that. I didn't want to put words in anybody's mouth, but since you brought it up, it did feel like one of those situations. You've probably been in it. I've probably been in it just doing the show for a little over the year that we've done, where you're like, I'm not sure I agree, but I'm going to pick my battles. It sounded like that's what, actually, when you were on vacation, Cole Kubelik was nice enough to come on the show. So I've got a relationship with him. And it sounded a little like he was trying to say, well, maybe, Greg, let's go to break. That's what it sounded
exactly.
Like.
Why it was absolutely ridiculous. Why does Greg McElroy even harbor this resentment to Tennessee when he was at Alabama? He never struggled with Tennessee. They beat Tennessee every year. It was Tennessee during the decade of dysfunction. And I just think that I'm sorry, you cannot convince me this is anything but some weird bias against Tennessee. And I usually don't say anybody who criticizes Tennessee hates Tennessee. I'm not one of those, but this made no sense. And there's times where I think like jumping with college students with the coach is a little bit like, I'm sorry, I've said this before to you, Dave. I think sometimes the way Bruce Pearl does it gives off a midlife crisis vibe for me. It's almost like he wants to go back to college to be a frat bro, I feel like, with Bruce Pearl. But Tony Vitello did it after winning the national championship.
Well, now, the other thing, too, is he worked for Omaha Productions, which is owned by Peyton Manning. So I thought when he was first hired by Omaha Productions, and I guess this was 2023, I thought that, to be real honest with you, he was a little homerish for Tennessee, and I wondered if it was because he worked for Peyton Manning's company. Now I wonder, is something going awry there? That's a possible conspiracy theory. I don't know if it has any merit.
I think Peyton Manning is the ultimate business person and is going to let anybody talk about whatever they want on his production network, honestly. Peyton Manning would never be the type to be like, you have to give Tennessee favorable coverage. To his credit, I'm sure he would be like, free speech, say what you want within the bounds of like, we're talking sports, so don't like bring politics or vulgarity into this, basically.
Certainly can't curse. No vulgarities at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler. Look behind me and look at that fantastic Power T pendant, that State of Tennessee pendant, and the cufflinks with the Power T on it. And those are all available at Rick Terry Jewelry Design. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry. How about the Fire Opals, a Tennessee tradition? RickTerryJewelry.com, RickTerryJewelry.com. I think that, and I've done a lot of radio, Caleb, I think there are fun things to say in the off season that you have to be really careful with. Sure, you can get something started, but at the end of the day, you hurt your credibility. I don't see how this could help his credibility. And this sounds like let's try to think of something to talk about topic in the slow days of the summer when you have to do 4 hours on the air.
Maybe, but this still doesn't make any sense. I mean, this one was.
I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying that's what it feels like to me.
I mean, college football coaches every day do weird dances whenever they get a big win, don't they? And so I mean, maybe that's the case. You could be right, but it seems like Greg McElroy, and I'll call him out on this. I think Greg McElroy's narrative is stuck in 2022 with Tennessee baseball, and he just can't get that out of his head. And so he argues points in a year that we're not living in, quite honestly, because it's not 2022. This is not the same team as 2022. I mean, this is like, what is tomorrow? Or is he going to argue that Alabama's struggling because of Philip Fulmer turning them in back in 1999? And we're going to rehash that? I mean, I think that's what it is. He's stuck in 2022 and he couldn't get out of it. And because this doesn't fit what Tony Vitello did, doesn't fit the narrative of 2022. It was a different team all the way around. You're right. He jumped in the crowd and celebrated with fans.
Now, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. If the 2022 team would have won it, would you have lamented it even just a little bit? Because let's face it, they were showboaty and off-putting to a large extent. Do you think Tennessee's fan base would have been like, I'm glad we won it, but golly, did they have to be such jerks?
No, but let me be very clear. I don't think they would, and I would defend their right to defend their team. I would just say that, and I said this at the time in 2022, I said criticism of Tennessee baseball's team is not that's inherently biased against the Vols. It's just people don't like the way they're playing the game. What Greg McElroy said yesterday is just inherent bias against the Vols, isn't it? Because it doesn't make sense. Like, even if you're a baseball, like the most baseball purist who's like, oh, you have to carry yourself in a certain way to play this gentleman's game that has been around since 1869. Like, even they would not be mad at how Tony Vitello celebrated, would they?
I don't understand how anybody can get mad at how he celebrated anything about it. I don't get it. I went back and watched his celebration even. I'm begging somebody on the message board to tell me one little thing that he did that was semi-objectionable because I
Well,
didn't
you know,
see.
I will tell you this, Alabama fans and the Alabama community. I'm sorry, I don't take too many shots at Alabama, but I remember being in Tuscaloosa one time, and they live by the act like you've been there philosophy because they think Bear Bryant invented that quote, which he didn't. But Alabama fans think everything came out of Tuscaloosa that was ever invented, football related or sports related. So they like to play the act like you've been there. So their whole thing is he needs to act like he's been there.
I guess the whole thing's just very odd to me. Sometimes it seems like he loves Tennessee. Sometimes it seems like he doesn't.